WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It has been a wild and woolly week of baseball here as the Orioles busted out the brooms on the World Champions. They are wicked hot, as they would say in Boston, on their way to Toronto. They'll get to Boston next week. We're going to get out to Chicago, Illinois right now, talk some baseball with one of our defending champions, who also has a leukemia story in his family, and we may get to that later on in this. But the bonding and the bromance continues. Seth Gruen here from Bleacher Report. He is their national baseball columnist out of Chicago, Illinois, where they're playing some pretty good baseball out there as well. What's going on, Seth? How's life out there watching fights from Baltimore via satellite, huh?
Life's good. That was an interesting one, I'll tell you. I didn't see it live, but as soon as I saw the news, I queued it up, and, that gives WWE Raw a run for its money there.
Yeah, maybe even UFC a run for its money. All right, from a national perspective, and I know you try to write about all of these issues as everybody on the web tries to tangle into this conversation. Both of these guys have a reputation. Both of these guys have had fracases. They've had a history together. But, there is something about what did Machado ever do to Ventura, right? Other than hit a home run, 99 in the ribs. I don't think there's anybody that's going to complain about Machado going out there and throwing a haymaker. I think that's what all of us would like to do.
No, yeah, I'd agree. I think Rodano Ventura has obviously a checkered reputation when it comes to this stuff. He's thrown at tons of guys, pointed at guys. He's an instigator, a rabble-rouser. He had that coming to him. I totally understand Manny Machado defending himself. I think Major League Baseball needs to do a better job of legislating this stuff out of the game. I mean, how often when a guy gets hit does it really get away from a guy? These are Major League pitchers, and to be a Major League pitcher, not only do you have to be able to throw very hard, and I'll get to that in a second, but you have to be able to locate the ball extremely well. So I find it hard to believe that any Major League pitcher on a consistent basis allows the ball to get away from them such that they're hitting a guy. Now, you get back to how hard these guys throw. 95, 96 miles per hour, that is a weapon.
It's a dodgeball with a weapon. Yeah, exactly.
There is a reason you can't drive that fast. And it's because anything traveling at those kinds of speeds can have a traumatic effect. And when you consider the fact that there are guys like Kirby Puckett whose careers have ended because they've been hit by baseballs, this stuff has to be legislated out of the game. You take someone's career, and you could argue someone's life, in your hands when you throw a ball 95 miles per hour towards their head, towards their body. I mean, lots of things can happen. It hasn't happened yet, but you could rupture an internal organ. I don't want to get into playing doctor, but there's a lot of just catastrophic things that could happen. Absolutely. If I were Manny Machado, I would have done the same thing.
Seth Gruen joining us here from Bleacher Report. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Seth Gruen. That's Gruen, just like my old tag team partner Wayne Gruen back at WITH in the 1990s. For where you are in Chicago, sitting there watching the Cubs, and now the White Sox have done a little fade, but I tell you what, they got a headline last week in picking up James Shields. That may be the biggest acquisition between now and July 31st. There's a real palpable baseball war thing going on in Chicago. We talk about how decent the Dodgers and the Angels have been over the last decade, and certainly in New York. They played in a World Series, and the Mets played in the World Series last year. This whole Chicago thing, it's a fun summer to be involved out there, and that hasn't been the case for long, long stretches of time, right?
Yeah, I think through the first month of the season, month and a half, 6 weeks, whatever, people would have argued that this is the epicenter of the baseball world. Given the Sox recent struggles, I could see people maybe pointing elsewhere or maybe specifically honing in on the north side of the city in Wrigleyville.
Yeah, there was a whole sort of focus on a different Ventura in Chicago a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's been fun. There's no question that if you're a baseball fan in Chicago, you're excited regardless of who you root for, where your allegiance is. And, we'll see what happens. I think the Sox are still in it. James Shields did get bombed his first time out, but, a change of venue or a change of scenery could be just what he needed. the situation there in San Diego isn't great, and I don't think the Sox are done. I mean, I could see them going after a guy like Ryan Braun or Joey Votto, even though they don't have the assets in their minor league system. Rick Hahn has proven the ability to get really creative with some of these trades and his ability to make that team better. So if you're a White Sox fan, or if you're closely paying attention to what's going on in the AL Central, stay tuned to the White Sox as we enter the middle of June here and trade rumors begin to heat up.
Seth Gruen from Bleacher Report joining us here talking some baseball. All right, so for the Orioles and where they are, obviously the pitching's not where they want it to be. The bats went very silent in Houston and out on the road trip. But by and large, they've righted the ship. And the Red Sox don't appear to be running away from anybody at this point. And the Orioles held their own, and they've got a whole week and a half now of AL East action coming up here over the next 10 days. But for the Orioles to be in first place the first week of June, playing 600 ball, this is about as good as it gets, and they're not selling tickets. I mean, if you saw the game on Wednesday night, and even the night after the fight, they gave umbrellas away, so there were some people there. The next night, it goes back down to 10,000, 12,000 to try to get the excitement together for Cleveland, for Baltimore, down in Texas as well. If the season ended today, these would be the teams in the playoffs, and I think there's great reason to be excited in all these places.
Oh, yeah, for sure. In terms of attendance, I think in some markets it's hard to get people to commit to a sport that's every day. I mean, the NFL rules in part because it's a low commitment. You just have to watch the games on a day you don't work, on a family day where you could just kind of plop yourself on the couch. But I don't mean to digress there. I can't speak to the Orioles' lack of attendance simply because I don't live there. I mean, I'd ask you, do the Nationals pull a lot of fans away from them?
I think they did a decade ago. I mean, I think there's a million reasons people don't go. I think the riots did nothing to make people want to come into the city. The Orioles raised ticket prices kind of wildly and late. They didn't send out their season ticket forms because their owner's a goof and a billionaire that hasn't talked to a fan in 20 years, quite frankly, about anything, or even talked to a sponsor about anything in 20 years about price hikes. I mean, he lives in his own little 85-year-old world. And, I mean, look, you live in Chicago. You saw how badly the Blackhawks were run for all of those years. And now, there's hope, and they win championships and all that. I think we all hold out that hope in Baltimore. But, all that being said, they're a really good baseball team, but the tickets are a little pricey. There's not a whole lot of discount. People come out when they give away a shirt or an umbrella. They really come out for that kind of stuff, but they don't come out as much for the homage stuff. Like the 66 reunion is coming up in July. It won't be 48,000 people out there all bleeding and boo-hooing and crying over my cousin who's more famous on the south side of Chicago, quite frankly. But, free stuff and bobbleheads and T-shirts, and funny hats, that's kind of what, when you see 35,000 people there, it's because they're doing that.
Yeah, well, the Sox, too, have to get creative in a lot of regards, giving away bobbleheads. They have Elvis night, fireworks. They do, camp outings, kids outings, and all sorts of stuff. So in that regard, we have that here, too, in Chicago.
Yeah, and the Cubs just roll the ball out even when they suck, right? I mean, now it's $100 to get anytime you want to go, right?
Yeah, they'll give away stuff, but Wrigley Field itself is a cash cow. A Little League team could play there. People would go out just to see Wrigley Field. When the Cubs were losing, what I noticed, or when they were in this rebuild, what I noticed a lot was that some of these visiting teams would attract a fan base. People would plan trips to Chicago and say, hey, I want to see my team go play in Wrigley Field. Or you'd see a lot of tourists who were just there because they wanted the experience of being in Wrigley Field. They didn't care who was on the field, and you could sort of notice that by the reactions and as the game ebbed and flowed. So it's hard to sell losing baseball, but when you're winning like the Orioles are, I guess it's a little bit more of a head-scratcher, and some of those reasons that you indicated seem in line with why they might struggle to get fans out to the park.
All right, well, other than that, I guess the best story of the month has been either the Rangers or the Indians in the American League, and the Indians is sort of coming of age at this point. We saw them 2 weeks ago. Boy, that shortstop's exciting, and they're a lot more solid than maybe I thought they were in spring training.
Me too. I thought they would kind of hover around 500, but this is a team with some veterans like a Jason Kipnis who who are sort of capable of riding the ship through the long haul of a 162-game season, and it seems like they'll be on the heels of the division. But if I could disagree with you just a little bit, I think that the Tigers, to me, are the story in that division, at least as of late, when you consider the fact that Brad Ausmus was on the hot seat, and then just timing. They played the Twins, they swept them, and here you go. They seem right back in this division race. Nobody's, you're 3-4 games back. That's well within striking distance, and a trade in July could make the difference there. So that AL Central to me is really, really interesting. And then you hit on the Rangers. They get Yu Darvish back, a top of the rotation guy. You have to figure that's like making a big trade in July. But that's another division that's really interesting. You got the Mariners, who have an outstanding bullpen, which is the best asset any team could have. And then you have the Astros charging after a horrible start. They seem to be sort of crawling back into the race. So there are a couple races there that should provide us some good theater in the dog days of summer.
All what we wanted with these extra wild cards, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the best things any sport has done. The baseball playoffs are great because their regular season means so much. I guess it has to when you play 162 games. But, because it's so exclusive, they don't let more than half the teams in like the NBA. And then once you get there, this wild card just provides for great theater. That one game playoff, you can't necessarily trot out your best pitcher, but your best available pitcher. And every ground ball means something. There's nothing better than the baseball playoffs.
I know you're a nerd about the MLB draft, and there are people that are, and there are people that aren't, and there are people that say, "Look, man, following the major leagues and the minors of Major League Baseball is enough. I can't watch Auburn and and Pensacola play too, and monitoring high school kids that could get drafted. It really is sort of this little secret society, the MLB draft amongst scouts and nerds. It doesn't really reach the fans in that way, but it comes to the fans this weekend." When names come off the board and everybody is the next Derek Jeter or the next Steven Strasburg, right?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I focus more on some of our draft profiles and draft features. Joe Reuter does a great job of putting together our mock drafts, and I encourage you to check them out at BleacherReport.com. I think when you look at the way in which Major League Baseball is going, some of the rebuilds that we've seen around baseball, you see half the National League trying to mimic what the Cubs, the Royals, and the Astros have done. The emphasis on team control, people are a little more interested in who these players are, who their teams are drafting. So while they may not look at it with the anticipation of, say, the first round of the NFL draft or the NBA draft, because those guys are going to have immediate impact, I think that to some degree there's some interest in the immediate aftermath of the draft. Okay, who did my team get? When might I see these guys, and how can they help us compete for the future?
But it's never going to happen quick in baseball, and the peter-out rate is so much greater than the NFL.
Right. That's the reason. That's the reason people aren't interested, or are less interested, because you don't get to see them right away.
Yeah, wake me when they get to Double-A, right, and they're hitting 300, right?
Yeah, unless you're a real hardcore fan who watches the major league team and then right after that fires up their computer and watches the minor league team. And, hey, all the power to anybody who does that. Nobody appreciates a great fan like I do. But, it's all about the fact that you just don't see these guys right away. Even in the hockey draft, they get to the NHL quicker. Some might make that immediate jump, and others might just play a year or so in the AHL before they're promoted.
Well, I know you're following it, and I know you'll be having some reaction to it all weekend long at Bleacher Report. That's always great catching up with you, man. I'll get out there to Chicago and get an old style with you at some point, all right?
Anytime. We'll talk again soon.
Appreciate you. Seth Gruen joining us here at Bleacher Report. You can follow him out on Twitter at Seth Gruen. That's Gruen, and we'll throw a tweet out as well. We've been streaming live on our YouTube WNSTV channel. You might want to check that out during the day parts here into next week as we get our cameras rolling around here. But we're always in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear, no static at all. Every morning at 7 a.m., our WNST morning newspaper hits your email inbox. That's free of charge and powered up by PlanetFitness.com. And last but never, ever least, breaking news, Machado suspensions, trades, all that stuff happens first on your mobile device. It is the WNST Tech Service. It is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I'll be out at Black Eyed Susan in Glendon from 11:30 till 2 on Saturday, signing copies of Purple Rain 1 and Purple Rain 2. Stop by, have some chocolates and bonbons, say hello if you're anywhere out in the Reisterstown, Owings Mills, Glendon area. It is Black Eyed Susan. Perhaps they'll pour me one. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.